Okay, so welcome back. So today we will talk about how to predict landfill gas production. So if you remember, so far in the landfill aspect, we looked at from the very beginning in terms of the liner requirement, what are the different types of liners. Then we talked about some of the construction issues, how the different types of drawings are to be made. We also talked about like a professional practice issues like the permitting and how the permit document works, how the construction supervision is done, all the QA QC requirement associated with that. And in the last module, we covered the aspect of how to predict leachate. So because when you try to do the leachate collection system, if you remember in terms of landfill, what I said in the few videos back is that there are several components of landfill design, but the two major components are leachate collection system and the gas collection system. So in the last video, we talked about how to predict how much leachate will be produced, because say any design you do, whether if you are an engineer or even if you are not an engineer, you think about anything. If you want to design, we need to know what it is designed for. So what function we want that particular system to perform. So in that case, we have a leachate collection system, which is was talked about in the previous video. We went over the basics of how to predict how much leachate will be produced. So based on the leachate production rate, we can design what's the type of pipes will be required, should be the spacing of the pipes, and all those requirements associated with that. Similarly, for the gas collection system, which is the other big component, landfill gas. So for the gas collection system, we need to also have to find out how much gas is going to be produced, and so that we can design our gas collection system to collect that particular amount of gas. So in this particular module, we'll focus on the landfill gas collection. So how to predict landfill gas collection? We will look into some of the very basics of landfill gas, some of the aspects that we have covered earlier in the course. You will may see same slides showing up, and then just to recap so that you get refreshed with that, and then we can discuss more in terms of landfill gas projections. So because you cannot wait until all the landfill has been constructed. You will not install and the gas starts producing, and as you saw earlier, the gas production happens over a long period of time. So always we need to model, we need to do some sort of model so that we can do some prediction, and based on that prediction we can do the landfill gas collection system design. So let's talk about that. So the focus for this particular module is on predicting landfill gas generation potential. So that's what we'll do. So we'll talk about some of the waste decomposition basics, which will be kind of review of what you have already seen before. You have already looked at waste decomposition basics, so you will have some of the review of what we had done earlier. And then the major is the landfill gas generation potential. In terms of the gas generation potential, if you remember, we also talked about a BMP test earlier. In waste characterization chapter, we had a BMP test, which is the biochemical methane potential. So that is also one way of predicting. So we can take the waste, and we do use the data from these kind of tests in the model as an input to the model, as you will see. So that is one way of finding out. Then if you have a CHO-NS analyzer, you can get the CHO-NS analyzer, then use the basic formula. If you know the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen and sulfur of the biodegradable fraction, the BVS fraction. Remember that we talked about that BVS fraction, biological volatile solid. So if you have that BVS fraction, if you know the formula for that BVS fraction, you can always use an equation to predict how much gas will be produced. So that's the total amount of gas that you will see over there. So that's in terms of those are the things we'll talk about in this particular lecture. So in terms of the waste decomposition basics, we have two. We talked about the anaerobic decomposition, which is the anaerobic digestion or composting, and we also talked about the landfill. So those are the two areas we have talked about. And aerobic digestion is composting. So anaerobic, landfill. So those are three in terms of in in terms of like anaerobic digestion, usually sometimes some people call it anaerobic composting as well, but it is not a very popular way of calling that process. Composting, usually we talk about the aerobic process, which is what you see at the bottom. So in aerobic you will have a aerobic composting, which will you will not see that much of a methane, but you will see. So you will have aerobic composting and also aerobic bioreactor landfill, which is all. This is again where you have the landfill, you try to inject air to it and you try to improve the degradation rate of waste decomposition. So those are the things we had talked about earlier. So what is the material we talk, this is again what is the material that contributes most significantly to anaerobic waste decomposition. So if you remember from the previous discussion, we had a discussion on this one. What is that material that contributes most significantly to anaerobic waste decomposition in a MSW landfill? It's the readily biodegradable components. Remember, if readily biodegradable, what do you mean by readily biodegradable? There are certain waste components which are biodegradable, which we know, like for example wood and textile, they are, and to some extent rubber. In theory, they are biodegradable, they will biodegrade, but it takes a long period of time for it to biodegrade. Readily means which will biodegrade very faster. Something like paper and paperboard, food waste, they degrade very faster. So those are called readily biodegradable components. So that's the term used for these kind of waste. So in terms of readily biodegradable components, paper and paperboard, food waste. So these is what you will see mostly as part of what we call BVS fraction, biological volatile solid fraction. Then there could be other components do break down, for example wood, as I was talking about, but over a longer time frame. Half-life is much higher. What is half-life? Again, half-life is, say if you start with X unit of that particular so X amount of a particular fraction of something which is biodegradable in terms of right now in terms of this discussion. So half-life, so after how many time period, in months, minutes or years, it will go to x by 2, like 0.5 of x. So that's called the half-life. But the concentration or the amount of that particular, usually we use it for contaminant, but also for, say here in terms of the biodegradable components. So biodegradable components, say there are x unit of biodegradable components, at what point it will become 0.5x. So that time frame is your half-life. So it is half of that material is already gone. So smaller the half-life, better the degradation. It's actually degradation is happening much quicker, and that means the gas production will be much quicker. So that's why to reduce the half-life and to increase the degradation, we do this bioreactor landfill, either air addition or anaerobic, where we do the leachate addition and all that. So that's so these, but in general, like when we talk about for a dry tomb landfill or any landfill, it's in terms of the anaerobic decomposition. These are the paperboard, food waste. They are they are kind of part of this BVS fraction, so biological volatile solid. So if we know the chemical formula of these two together, which will be kind of BVS fraction, we can always use the equation and predict how much gas will be produced. So, but the gas gets produced over a long period of time. So that's also we need to, reaction is not very fast. So we need to take that thing in picture. So typical MSW composition, you have seen it so many times in this class so far. We have, this is again coming from the Western world because most of the books are written over there. But in the Indian context, you will see more, here our food waste is, which one is 12%. And it's much less, but in Indian, and the paper is 36%, which you will not see that much in Indian context. Actually the paper will be much lower, and the substance and the other like food waste will tend to be much high. Again, the food waste, this particular pie chart in we talked about in the class, in Indian scenario this pie chart actually keeps on changing as well, because when I say it's changing as well, it's changing as a function of like how the waste is moving in the collection system. So waste that I and you produce and put it on in our trash can, which goes into that collection person, the primary collection person who comes to your houses, is is a certain composition, but when it goes to the primary collection point where it gets dumped into the primary collection center, cows comes in, eats most, and other animals may come in and eats a lot of this food waste and other stuff. Then some cow, dog and other stuff will be there, other animals will be there. Then the rack pickers will come in and take some of these plastics and papers away. So this pie chart is not it's a dynamic pie chart in Indian context. So it's really, you need to look at the pie chart based on from where the sample has been taken. So that is very, very important. So from where the sample has been taken. So say if you talk about like if it's an existing dump site and you want to find out whether the dump site will produce enough methane or not for doing some gas to energy project in India, and like landfill gas to energy project, and then you take the sample from the individual houses, that's not the correct sample, because what is coming to the dump site may not be as what is you are disposing of to those individual houses that is coming, those are like a primary collection point, because things does change, and by the time it reaches to the dump site the composition will be very different. And in fact that will be a very interesting study to do, where if some of you who are listening to this or taking this course, if you want to do a master's thesis or a PhD thesis, a PhD thesis will require some extra work as well, but in terms of master thesis, even if somebody comes up with this, how this pie chart changes as a function of the waste collection system, from our houses to the primary collection to the secondary collection and ultimately to the dump site or the treatment facility. If we can have all these 4 different pie charts for a particular city, it will be really worthwhile to see like how much difference it is showing up. And I'm pretty sure the difference will show up, because your composition keeps on changing, the food waste keeps on going away in terms of the food for these animals, and then some of these recyclables which do end up in you end up in the waste stream is taken away by the rack pickers. So in the percentage wise your pie chart will be much different as a function of distance the waste has traveled basically within a city, from the house all the way to the dump site. Presently dump site, as per MSW management rules, we should not have, we have to close those dump sites and make a regional landfill or waste to energy or waste treatment facility, but that's but as if we can do that, that's actually a very good information, because what is happening in many times, people are, all these DPRs and other things are made based on what is being generated at home, and but what we are dealing with the waste, actually dealing with the waste, is actually what is showing up in the dump site, and they are different, and but we don't really can show how much they are different. If some of you are excited now to do that master's thesis, please go ahead and do that, and if you need help, contact me, I'll help you, but it will be really good work. So once you have this BVS fraction, as I was trying to tell you earlier, once you have this BVS fraction, you know the chemical formula. Either you can get it if it's a standard kind of waste which people have researched on quite a bit, the formula may be available in the literature, we talked about that. If you are looking at a waste stream for a particular city, you can always do this like a ultimate analysis or proximate analysis, get all these VS and all those numbers. If you know the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen and sulfur number from CHONS analyzer, you can come up with this formula for that particular waste. So once you have this formula for this particular waste, you can plug in the number over here, which we looked at earlier in terms of the anaerobic digestion, anaerobic decomposition. So you know that this much methane will be produced. So this is one way of, and this much of CO2 will be produced. Now, if you look at these equation, when we say that this much methane and this much CO2 will be produced, here we are assuming that the 100% of this is actually reacting. But this 100% reaction does not happen instantaneously. It is not instant reaction. It takes time. There is a kinetics. So there is a kinetics involved. So it takes time. So the waste will degrade, will start degrading. Basically, theoretically, if you put a waste, if it's in a chute, it's in a favorable condition, it will start degrading immediately. So for example, if you have certain food, and so the people say that we should try to consume the food after it is cooked, like fresh food is better, no decomposition at that particular time. But if you just leave the food as it is, and then it starts degrading, and you see that, because if you have a food left over, we call it become a stale now, a stale food having some weird taste or some maybe smell there, and that's because the decomposition has already started. and the acids have already started being formed, and that's why it leads to those peculiar tests, like some test which is not the natural test of that particular food. That's why we keep it in the refrigerator. That's the whole purpose of using refrigerator. Many times we may not just think about it, we do things mechanically. We keep the things in the refrigerators at 4 degrees centigrade or below 4 degrees centigrade. The reason for that is below that at 4 degrees centigrade and below, the biological activity is zero. It's almost zero, close to zero. So that's why our food doesn't go bad. That's why you see how the milk doesn't go bad when it's in the fridge. Especially if you leave the milk, if you forget to put it in the fridge, by the evening your milk has gone bad. So that's because of the biological activity already started on that. You have the degradation already started, but the degradation takes a period of time. So for example, if you have a certain amount of this particular waste starts degrading, and ultimately it will produce this much amount of methane. Ultimate methane production is this much, but this methane production is not instantaneously. It's not after 1 hour you will have this much methane coming out. This much methane will come out once this entire waste which is whatever, like X mole, Y mole, we put it in there, this X mole of this has entirely degraded, and that takes time. So, but we have to produce a gas collection system. We have to install a gas collection system. So we need to see how this waste will degrade, like how much gas will be produced every day or every year, so that I know how much gas I can expect in my gas collection system. So based on that, I can have this gas pipes in there. So so we have to come up with some sort of prediction, and that's what we'll try to do in remaining part of this particular module. So I think that gives you enough background to think about it. So with that information, we will try to model this landfill gas generation. Now we know the gas is produced. Whenever the waste is there, it will degrade, gas is produced. Anaerobic condition, methane will be produced, and aerobic condition, CO2 will be produced. Anaerobic, CO2 is also produced. So anaerobic, both CO2 and methane both are produced. Now in a landfill in a landfill, when we are trying to predict landfill gas production, waste is coming in batches. So every day it is getting collected from the primary collection, goes to the secondary collection, gets into the big truck, goes to the landfill, or may go to a transfer station, from there to the landfill. So finally it goes to the landfill, and once it should be engineered landfill, but once it is there, it gets decomposed, it gets dumped into those cells if it's engineered landfill. Now every day the same process is going on and on and on. So think about year 2017. Now 1st January 2017, you had a certain amount of waste coming in. 2nd January, another amount. 3rd January, another amount. So every day you have certain amount coming in, which is, if it comes from one particular area, it will be more or less similar kind of number. It may fluctuate depending on the day, depending on some festivals and other things happening in that area, but more or less you will get the similar amount of waste coming into the landfill. Now the waste that came out on January 1st, it's the amount of gas that it is producing in the landfill is started producing from January 1st itself. Now on January 2, some waste, new waste came in, and that started producing waste, some gas from January 2. But the January 1 waste is still producing gas on January 2 as well, on January 3, January 4, and it will keep on producing keep on producing gas until the whole potential, the amount of gas that it can produce has run out. So the maximum amount of gas that it can produce has gone. So the gas generation happens from these multiple batches. So we are calling it the batches. Sometimes I was trying to explain the batches in a day. You may take weekly batches, you may take yearly batches. As small you take the batches, better it is in terms of product, in terms of estimation. So those are in terms of multiple batches of waste is coming in. Now the other aspect says, so this is in terms of the general landfill that we have, and we will try to predict how from each batch you can basically create certain, essentially what it does, it creates a spreadsheet based model, which we will talk about it in a minute. So before that, just another aspect, we have talked about bioreactor landfill in this particular course. So bioreactor landfill is when you start recirculating leachate. The goal of the bioreactor landfill, the most popular there are other way of doing bioreactor landfill as well, but the most popular way of doing bioreactor landfill that we know of today is wherever it is being done, whatever the leachate is produced in the landfill, they are trying to put it back into the landfill. So there is a leachate recirculation system, but this leachate recirculation system does not really start on day one. So say again, going back to that 1st January 2017 batch of waste, say it was collecting the waste. Now in 1st January 2020, I have started recirculating the leachate, because recirculation of leachate will usually start when the landfill has reached its capacity. So you have reached the capacity, you have the top cover, and then you start recirculating leachate, because and that's typically how it is done. Or so in say that happens on 1st January 2020, we start recirculating the leachate. Now since we have started recirculating the leachate, the waste decomposition factor, which is the K value, remember from your kinetics that K, which is the rate of reaction. So the K value in a bioreactor landfill will be different than in a normal landfill, because the bioreactor landfill, you are recirculating the leachate, more moisture. As we know, moisture, microbes love moisture. So if they have an optimum moisture condition, the microbes will be really happy, they will reproduce, and they will have more, the family will grow, and then more and more family members means more and more food required. So for them, the food is our organic waste. So they will start degrading those organic waste. But when we say degrading, is basically they are eating this organic waste as a food source, as an energy source, and in a process they are decomposing, they are creating the decomposition of this organic waste and produces different types of gas, and methane being one of them in anaerobic condition. So based on, but that in 2020, after we started recirculation, the K value will change. Initially the K value is different. So for the 1st January 2017 waste, for 1st January 2017 waste, if we call it a batch A, for this batch A of waste, which came to the landfill on January 1, 2017, it degraded from January 1, 2017 to December 31st, 2019. Now on 1st January 2020, I started recirculating leachate. So the K value that I will use from 1st January 2017 to 31st December 2019, it will be different. There is no bioreactor there. But from 1st January 2020, we can use that bioreactor K value. Although you may argue that you will not get the moisture distribution on day one, but there is always, you have to do some approximation, otherwise things becomes too complex to handle. But there will be two K values, one K value for a normal operation of the landfill, one K value for the bioreactor landfill. As per today, the model that we have, this is the EPA gas model, LandGem versus version 3.02. I think the newer version is also out there, but you can go and download this. Go on Google, put this EPA gas model, LandGem version, LandGem, don't need to produce version, you will get the latest version anyway, and then you will be able to download this software. It's available for free. Again, as I was telling you the other day, US EPA, they are very smart people. What they do, they make most of their stuff, these kind of things freely available for everybody in the world. Why? Because if it's freely available, you will download it, you will use it. While using it, you will come up with some shortcomings of this model. You will talk about this model is problematic here, this model needs to be modified, and this and that, and you are doing it on Indian taxpayers' money. The government of India is actually funding your research, and what you are doing, you are helping EPA to make its model better, and that's why they make everything available. I have no idea why in India we have that these data are hidden. Like most of the time, it's very difficult to find data. I am sitting at IIT Kharagpur. We have the Kasai River nearby, or the several river basins, Swarnarekha River, and those kind of stuff, the rivers. For me to get those data is much difficult. If I want St. John's River data, which is in Georgia and Florida in US, I can find it within 15 minutes. I can download all the data on my computer from their website in 15 minutes. And since the data is easily available, say if I have a master's student, he has to do a thesis, he has only 6 to 8 months to work on. And if just to get the data by banging our head on those government offices, if it takes few months, nobody will be interested to do that. So, and then St. John's River District is getting benefit of the master's student work which was done on the money spent by government of India. So, and just because the data is freely available, so everybody will use it, and that's the beauty. Like that's why I don't understand why in India we keep the data hidden. It's very difficult to find data, and even if the data is there, nobody wants to share it. People are afraid. Sometimes maybe they are afraid because they are not sure, they are not confident that data is correct. Maybe the data is not really correct. It's could be that it's a fudged data. It's a made up data because people have not gone to the field. They just wrote down something on their book sitting in an AC room. That those things might be possible, but those things should not happen. So if we make everything and transparent in the public domain, people will be forced not to make those kind of I would call mistakes, if it's actually a mistake, because essentially you are cheating yourself. So it's if you're not doing your work properly, you are cheating yourself. So it's then you're not really cheating anybody else. First of all, you're cheating yourself. Of course, you may be cheating others too. But that's in terms of, so this LandGem, coming back to that, like a LandGem model is available for free. You can download and then you can play with that. You can even try to model some of the gas production in the Indian scenario. Of course, we have to use the data from that Indian landfill, but we can do that. And if you find some problem with this LandGem, we publish a paper. The EPA will look at that actually, and then they will modify it so that they will get the benefit of work that we do. And of course, they are making it freely available, so people it's easy for us as well. So essentially, what this model does, it's a very basic. This is the basic equation in the model. So mass. So it's a first order exponential decay model. Essentially, it's assuming that first order exponential decay. So what we are assuming is the remaining mass T at a particular point is M0, which is the M0 is the initial mass of the waste, what will it started with. Say this is mass T. So if we talk about from the previous discussion that we had, that 1, 20, 20. So whatever the mass at T is mass 0, which will be 1, 17, and then with a T, so T was 3 years here. So if we want to find out among the batch of waste which got decomposed on 1/1/17, what is the mass left on 1/1/20 on like 1st January of 20? So M0 e to the power of minus k. K is the decay rate, and times T. T is the time period, which we can put based on the unit for K, we can put the unit of T, and then this is the time since the decay has begun. So this is how we can find out how much is the remaining mass of a certain particular batch of waste is there. So, and the landfill, once the landfill gas is generated, we can we know that this is the landfill will travel in the path of least resistance. We already talked about that. This is how the landfill gas collection system looks like. You have the horizontal gas well, you have the vertical gas well. So there is a there will be pressure, there will be pressure gradient, and things will move into wherever you create the vacuum. So this is just to kind of recap what you already saw. So the total volume of gas that can be produced by mass M0, which is the total mass which is there in the waste, the total amount of gas that is being produced is based on the landfill gas generation potential L0. So, and it is L0 times M0. So that's the total amount of gas. Say if we have a mass M which is decomposed, which was disposed on a particular day, say January 1st, 2017, the total amount of this is the mass on that particular batch. So the total amount of gas that it can produce is M0 times L0. Now what is L0? L0 is the landfill gas generation potential. So that is again we can calculate it from the biochemical methane potential. So how much is the maximum methane it can produce? Methane is around 50% or 55%. So based on that we can find out what is the L0 value. So for most of the waste stream, L0 value is already, you will have the L0 value available. So you will be given L0 values or you can find out from the lab based experiments. So the cumulative, so if you look at the cumulative gas produced at any point, the cumulative volume of gas that is produced, which is GT at any time T, is also depends on the rate of landfill gas. Rate at which the landfill gas is produced is the K value and can be described that GT is equal to M0 times L0 e to the power of minus KT. Because if you look at here, G0 is this. So GT gas at a particular time T will be L0 times whatever is the like the mass like a mt, which is the mass remaining at that particular point. So, mass which is already degraded before that. So, this is m0 times L0, that's the total amount of gas, minus what gas like a it's like a m0 L0 times e to the power of minus kt, based on because mass at particular time t left is m0 e to the power of minus kt. So, from that particular mass is still the gas needs to be produced. So, we subtract that part. So, the total amount of gas that can be produced, so that gives us this fraction. The total amount of gas that can be produced is this. If I take the 1 from inside the formula, inside the bracket, and then the other part, which is the m0 L0 times e to the power, the other when you multiply it by this. So, this with this one gives us what is the mass amount of gas that is still needs to be produced. So, the total amount minus the gas which is still needs to be produced, if you subtract that, that gives you the gas which is already produced. Again, listen, again I will repeat it. So, the total amount of gas that can be produced minus the amount of gas that is still needs to be produced, is still will get produced. If you subtract that, that's the amount of gas which is already produced. So, this is the amount of gas based from the waste which has already been decomposed. So, again going back from January 17 to January 2020. So, that period the gas produced, if we take the t is equal to 3 years, that is the amount of gas we will get in this particular, we can get it from this particular formula. So, if you know this, so that basically tells you at what one particular time how much gas will be produced. So, you can just so, the gas flow rate at any given time can be estimated as G at a particular time is m0 L0 k and times e to the power of minus kt. So, that gives you the value for at any particular time. So, you can plot it. So, it is a first order gas production curve corresponding to the one batch of waste. So, this is for one batch, say January 1st 2017. Similarly, we can have January 2, 2017, January 3, 2017. So, that will be too many graphs. So, what we usually try to do, we try to do it monthly. So, we try to do January 2017 as one batch, although we are losing some. For some we are losing some, we are gaining also some. What is coming after January 15th is also calculated as the whole month. So, but we do it monthly. That's the way typically we do, like January, February, March. So, for every month we'll consider it as a one batch. So, that's so you can plot them. So, not feasible to but this is not feasible to simulate for just one batch. You have to do it for many other batches. So, landfill accept waste for many years. So, typically it is model one batch for each year's worth of waste. So, either I said month, sometimes even you can do it for year. So, here it is suggesting that you do it for each year. So, usually you can do it like each year will be easier for doing than month, but month will be more accurate. So, it depends on how you do it. I think this model does it for every year. But you can whatever equation you saw, you can make your own model. So, you don't have to, you can make your own model on the Excel spreadsheet, and you can go even for every month to do that, take a calculation every month. So, this is how you will get. So, for each batch you will get the total gas, like a gas production from each batch, batch 1, batch 2, batch 3, batch 6, and then it will continue, it will continue further, and and then you will get the total gas production curve. While you basically this curve here is the addition of all these curves. If you add all these curves, so these curves all added together gives this curve. So, that is how we get those number. So, you can take several batches of waste, say 2000, 2001, 2002. So, you start taking the waste, here we stop taking waste, begin operation of gas collection. So, we can have every batch, we can put that yearly, and then we do a model the gas production. We can do the traditional landfill as well as the bioreactor landfill. Here the K values are different. For traditional landfill, the K value is different than bioreactor landfill. For both these traditional as well as the bioreactor landfill, if you do the area under the curve, it will be the same. The total amount of gas production is the same. In the bioreactor, it gets produced in a smaller period of time. So, that's the only difference we have. So, that's so here total gas production is a waste mass and methane generation potential. Therefore, the area under both the curves is above the same. The bioreactor landfill goal is to increase the waste decay rate. So, we will have a higher rate of degradation. and this is it uses the EPL NGM 3.0. You can use what you need as a user input, annual waste placement. You need L0 values, you need the K values, you need the concentration of NMOCs, what is the concentration of non-methane organic carbon. You can always take some gas sample and find out those values, so that's not a problem. So that's how this LandGem is done. So this is how the gas production model is done. So I will, like this, since as I said in the very beginning of this course we have not, it's not, we cannot go into really very depth in terms of landfill gas collection, landfill leachate collection, because that landfill design itself is a separate course. Maybe if time permits in future, I would maybe offer that. But in terms of just a big picture, so that at least you know how to do it. So if you are interested, download this LandGem model, play with this LandGem model. It's very easy. It's a spreadsheet based model, and then see it. And if you have any questions for now, put it on the discussion board. We'll be more than happy to answer. But if you have questions later on, you have my email address. You can, but during this course, please don't send email, because if I have 7,000 emails, it will be a problem. But after the course is over, in future, for any personal reason, you can always send me email. That's a different thing. But I should not say that during this course. But for this course, use the discussion board. Discussion board is the where we will respond to your query. And I look forward to seeing your questions on the discussion board. Hope you are enjoying this course. And again, I'll see you in the next module. Thank you.